Computer.
Leave me.
All right, everybody.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Gary, you're good. We're here. We're ready to go. Everybody, welcome back to our channel. Gary, like you did last time, like and subscribe. We need to, yeah, right there, like and subscribe. But guys, this is episode 2 with the boys again. So tonight we are going to discuss the importance or things that we find important from junior to college, all the way up to professional level. We got 4 people here who have experienced all of those. Some have experienced it more in depth than others, but we all share our own experiences. So to start this off, we're going to start with junior development. So at the beginning stages for you all, let's say I'm going to put a scenario in everybody's head. You have somebody between the ages of 8 to 11. What is your priority from an 8 to an 11-year-old?
You want me to start?
Hey, whoever wants to start, you're going to get 2 minutes on the clock.
All right.
2.5 to start. So about 7, maybe like 7 to 12, 8 to 12, maybe 8 to 11, kind of in that range. Just to set the tone, what would be a priority for you at that stage? It could be whatever comes to mind.
So to me, it depends on their level more than their age. So some kids are more mature at certain ages, but the first step is the structural foundation. You want that technical side locked in. You want the building blocks of the whole game kind of established. I don't think it's super important to start playing like lots and lots of tournaments before you're technically ready, you know. But then once that's established, then you need a lot of tournaments and learn the ability to compete, basically emotionally, how to behave on the court, how to lose and keep going. And those are the kind of like underlying things I see.
So you still got like a minute and a half. So do you guys any questions you want to, like, we can kind of give like Pat his like 2.5 minutes to answer anything that if you guys want to add to it, because I want to keep this like open and kind of go back and forth.
So I do have one, and this is interesting in terms of like training windows, right? Like there's common time frames, right, for child development in terms of what you can maximize, right? So like strength is for boys is like around 15 to 17, right? That's when you should be focusing on that. And at that younger age, what would you focus on in terms of like off court or like you mentioned technical, and then like learning how to compete and like understanding the game? What would you do from the physical standpoint and focusing on that area?
The physical standpoint, you're still young enough to build like faster hands, faster explosive stuff. So like kind of the weapon things off court, I would say. So explosive movements and just becoming faster and faster. There's actually a good book I read called Talent Code. And one of the parts they talked about the fastest runners, sprinters in the world. And most of them are younger brothers or younger siblings. They have an older sibling that they were always running around trying to chase and catch up with, and that actually added to their, overall abilities as they got older. So running a lot, explosive movement, all that stuff. And then injury prevention. In today's game, I think it's evolved from like 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago, they just run you to death when you're a kid, and that's good to build the mental toughness. But now you need to be more aware of good prehab routines and warm-ups and dynamics and all that other stuff.
All right, so JY, you get your 2.5 minutes. So again, that age group, what do you got?
Well, first of all, read the book Talent Code. How about that? That's a great book. I mean, there's so many like that. So I think that's a great thing. I go back and forth on wavering which one. The more I coach juniors, the more I'm trying to go slightly less on technique and more on footwork for most players, because if you teach them too long in a standing position, their technique might be perfect, but by the time they're 11, 12, if they're not comfortable sprinting down balls, like it's really hard to then all of a sudden say, okay, you need to start running, but tennis is already hard enough, and now they have to work this hard with their lungs, like,
Yeah.
and so there's like they restrain a little bit, and they're like, oh, I don't know if this is the game I signed up for, right? I've found that battle a lot. So if you just teach kids, like, find a balance between, okay, we've done enough technique today, but let's do this technique while running now.
Yeah.
Right.
So let me clarify, JY. Sorry to cut you off, but the technical side, while you move, like the biomechanics while you're moving. So like keeping the wide base while on the run, and like stopping a kid and saying, no, you were narrow base and you slapped. You need this technical specific thing, you know, as you go. And then as you get older, it's more flexible than that. But just to clarify my answer, the technical side is also the biomechanics while you're running and moving, and I agree.
So
yeah,
JY,
and I guess
you're good.
yeah, I was just gonna the one thing I find less is, I think it's along the lines of what you said, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes just having them run fast, chasing down a ball, like where I almost don't look so much at technique. It's almost like, hey, just get there and touch the ball. Just like you said, now maybe it's only 5 minutes a day, right? You find where the player's at, but you know, just I've seen so many like junior American players that are uncomfortable just moving at a ball 60% of their speed. But the young ones who play soccer, that they play movement sports, they're comfortable running. So they come to a tennis court and they're comfortable running around. That's the part where I think, like, I'm finding myself spending a little more time on, where it's just, okay, that's enough technique, just start running. Like, yes, I want you to hit it well, but I'm not going to be so hard on it for right now.
Yeah.
So that's the balance I'm trying to find more.
That's past the point of them being able to make 10-shot rallies. Like you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You know what I mean?
But like I said, yeah. So maybe if they can't hit 10 balls in a row, right? I'd say maybe 45 minutes of that practice might be done in a pretty small range, right?
Yeah.
Of movement. And then maybe the last 5-10 minutes, just, all right, just go learn to chase these balls down.
Yeah.
Right. And then maybe I'll give them a goal. Let's see if we can get 3 in a row today. And then that's it. And then I'm done. Right. Because like you said, they still have to be able to hit a ball and get it in. But I'm trying to find that balance of, okay, if I do this for 4 months straight, which sometimes it takes kids that long to make 10 in a row at that age, that's a lot of time not moving. Right. So that's the balance I'm trying to find.
All right. So I've been like smirking this whole entire time. I might have to go into a beginning rant within the first 6 minutes of this
Rant,
video.
Chris, rant. I want to know what you think.
Bro, I might have to go into. I might have to unleash.
I'll give you my time for the next one. So long as
I might have
it's a
to
rant, that's good
unleash
enough.
right now. So
Unleash.
building on what JY just said, I can't stand, because I spend a lot of time on social media, right? I can't stand the amount of videos that I see that people are like, and everything is from a standstill. It's like, do this technical thing. Here's your 3 tips to get the forehand deep in the court. And the person is just like standing there. It's like, this just isn't realistic. So I love what both of you said. So I guess I'll take now my 2 minutes on. So when I get in those early stages, I'm all hyped, Gary. Because I spent a lot of time obviously with junior development. And so I've had a lot of trial and error doing stuff, you know, between those ages, 6 to 11, 6 to 12. And the biggest thing that I always work on, the very first thing, is body control, movement, technique, right? I combine those 3 things in those early stages. So the biggest thing that I always do is I always work their first move in the hands and then feet, right? It's like, how do those 2 things connect? And then processing and doing that while obviously moving. And then right away, I'm already working in different footwork patterns, you know, especially like crossover in the recovery, like how to move properly. So many kids, like, you know, I always call it like playground movement, as I'll tell people, like if I see a kid on the court and they're just like running around, I'm like, you look like you're playing on a playground, rather than you have your trained athlete versus an untrained athlete. And so that's the biggest thing that I focus on heavy right out of the gate, so that those kids understand, if I see a ball come to my forehand, what is my first move? What is my first step? And then, you know, and then as I pick the speed up, I gradually build it from hand fed, moving back, racket fed, live ball, continue that progression until it builds, and then continue to build on that.
Would you consider that a structural technical development, even with the movement?
What do you mean?
Like you're saying like you build in those coordination drills and yeah, the playground movement and that type of thing. Do you think that would be considered like structural technical development, or do you think that would be more of like a fitness type thing? Would that differ?
Structural.
Okay.
Yeah, structural. Because then I think as that continues to build, like, because the biggest thing anytime I get a new player, I will get a kid. I'll just put the kid on the service line. I throw them a ball, and I'm like, I want to know what their first move is. If their first move is just with their feet, then I know that they're untrained. I know that they've just gone out and hit tennis balls. Like, they don't actually have a trained structure from the beginning. Like, what is your first move when you go to this ball? And so, no, definitely structural. And then as it continues, kind of like what JY was saying, you know, then if they have that beginning, you know, what's your response, you know, and then they start running to the ball, then at least they're kind of building up to that with, you know, with speed, movement, and doing things at a faster pace, and then learning how to adjust to ball height, depth, spin, and all that, and then continue to, you know, build it from there in those early stages. All right, Gary, your turn. So we can continue to go on with the junior stuff and then work our way up.
I definitely agree with like the setting the racket technical pieces, and I absolutely agree with what JY is saying about movement. Right, it's like it has to be movement based. It's a movement sport, and I think that's where building an athlete first. Right, like you mentioned, players who play multiple sports, play soccer, you know, foot-eye coordination, foot movement, are light on the feet, can do that, or play other sports, end up doing very, very well in tennis because they are a general athlete, not a tennis specific athlete, right? And so the specificity, I think, has to come a little bit later, especially in those younger years. It's like general flexibility. You know, your peak windows are that 6 to 10 for most kids, right? It's like you got to be flexible. You got to do some sort of gymnastics. You got to do maybe a martial art or something that's not tennis specific. If it's on court, you know, maybe you're doing stretching routines, but kids find that boring. So it has to be more engaging. It has to be, you know, tumbling and like, you know, other things that can kind of expand their ability for that. And absolutely agree with, again, with what everybody said, is like the athletic skills. Like, I love this word because it's super fancy. Proprioception, right, is just means your awareness of yourself relative to space around you. So it's like,
did you learn that at West Point?
No, that was
that was the thesis for his presidential nomination.
Yeah, that was it.
You learned that at West Point.
Yeah, no, that's like it's like a really fun term I think it's a really great term because it's your understanding of yourself relative to space around you. So it's, you know, you toss a kid a ball, and let's say you do that drill, Chris, and you toss a kid a ball and they run it down, and then it's like, don't look down. Where are you on the court? Do you know where you are on the court without having to look at your feet and look around you?
Yeah.
Right. That is a really important skill, because then that leads to, okay, how do I recover from this position? How do I get back into a neutral position? How do I get from a defensive or an offensive position? You know, all of those other tennis specific skills build off of that. And absolutely, like that speed window as well for development is like, it's around that age. It's usually a little bit further, different for girls and a little bit earlier for girls, a little bit later for boys, but it's like around that age to up to 12. You got to have them running explosively. And if they don't have the structural, like if they don't engage their arms or their internal core as they're moving, they're not going to be balanced. They're not going to be able to decelerate. They're not going to be able to be explosive in their first step. And I think that the off-court stuff and the multiple sport element has to be a focus in those younger years, because it also leaves tennis as more fun rather than it's all work from that young age.
Yeah.
You know.
So let's say when we get to, and we're gonna kind of build into this, and I think we all agree on the one thing I want to say as far as transitioning into, let's say, like the 13 to 16, where, and I think we all agree with this, on how we could all care less about what our players would do at 10, 11, 12. We don't care about tournament wins, any of that. I mean, it just has no value. I actually think, JY, I think you actually posted something the other day I saw, which I totally agreed with, on like,
loved it.
Those like 10, 11, 12s just mean nothing. I mean, it's so even like maybe a little bit of 14. So going into the teen years of junior development, what becomes the bulk of your focus 13 to 17, right? Like, we'll call it the teenage years before college, before we transition into the college years. What would be the bulk of your focus? Whether it's, does it change between male, female, personality, character types, kind of however way you guys want to structure that? Let's JY, let's have you lead it off. I feel like you got something brewing in there.
It's a two-part answer, but it makes sense as one, which is learning how to compete, and within that is learning the structure of a match, learning the structure of a tournament, learning how to deal with yourself, learning the energy required to compete, the attitude required to compete, how to focus on important points, how to know your set plays, your strategy, just have a basis for how to perform on the tournament day. And I say on the tournament day because it's not just the part on the court, it's the warm-up, it's before that. What time do I arrive? When do I eat lunch? Oh, I have 2 matches. How do I handle that?
Yep.
All of that. So
any questions for JY, boys?
One of the things that, because I get a lot of, is because I'll get work with kids who are just kind of like late to the game a little bit, who maybe picked up tennis at a later age. And so at 11 to 13, their UTRs are in the low digits, they're in the 2s and the 3s, and they're just like really have a long way to go. And do you see this, and I guess this is for JY specifically, but like anybody can comment, when they start to realize how much dedication it actually takes? Like, if you're going to be a high performance player, there's no bar mitzvahs. You're not going to your friend's birthday party. You're not doing, Thanksgiving with the family if you're playing at the national level. You're not doing Christmas. You're trying to play Orange Bowl. You're playing Eddie Herr. You're playing all these other junior events. Do you notice that there's a severe drop off in terms of the passion, I guess, or the fire that a kid may have when they realize, oh, I really wasn't doing it all in. I thought I was like, oh, I identified as a tennis player. But then when all of the things actually came out, it's like, oh, no, that's a bit much. Do you guys notice that happens at that age? Because I definitely see
Yes. But I think it happens more because even though they find out what it takes, but they don't have someone there with them, guiding them, helping them, reminding them, this is worth it. You're doing the right things. You're fine. Your process is fine. No, you shouldn't be better. You're right where you just literally guiding them every day, because that's what it takes. And I found at least I feel that way now that I'm spending a little more time at home. I can help kids more with that.
Yeah.
And there's just a better buy-in because they feel like they're being taken care of. So they don't question the process as much. And when there's those tough losses early in tournaments, the coach is there to say, no, I saw that match. Like, you're fine. Trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me. You're okay. And then that just puts them at ease and allows them to stay in the process longer. The ones who lose that motivation are the ones who are like, okay, great. I know I need to do more. Can someone help me put this in my environment? Can someone help me now? And they don't get that. They don't get that help.
Yeah. So I think this is I think this is a great tie into Patty, because Pat, I think you've seen so many of those kids at Saddlebrook, right? And like at the academy, these kids are just, they're just rotating week in, week out, seasons, summers, you're thousands and thousands and thousands of kids. So what's kind of like what's your take on that age range, as far as, or even kind of commenting on whether you want to build off JY or just kind of your own?
Yeah. So I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think also it's heavily individual based. I think There are kids that have a lot of young success, early success. And for the early success kids, it's very easy to burn out because there's such a pressure and emphasis placed. The kids that kind of enjoy the process earlier, that realize it's about the process, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You know, you gotta build long term. Those kids generally are happier and develop longer than a lot of the kids with the early success and burnout. But I think pretty much all these questions, I like to try to simplify it into age groups and everything, or simplify it into categories. And I think a lot of coaches do, and it's very difficult because everything is such an individual based. Like I've had a player that was great results in the 12s. He had a beard in the 12 and unders and just dominating. You know, I would, and he understood point structure already. You know, and like for a player like him, sometimes you got to take the foot off the gas a little bit, you know, have a little more fun playing, learn a little more different strategies, learn how to lose a little bit while having fun, going for some certain volley plays if you never do it, you know, just add in some other stuff. So it's very individual based. The burnout is prevalent in tennis at all levels, you know, because you realize how much it takes, and everybody has different goals. So goals might change when you get more information. So, I mean, I guess my answer is, I don't know. It depends.
Yeah. So
I'll something I want to say really quick.
No, you're good.
But like, you know, back to the where they lose their motivation, right? With what Gary said, a lot of times what happens is because they set those goals and they go to these academies, but the best coaches, you know, are the ones who have the information and that most kids work with, only put their attention like to the best kids.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, I have the same goals. I want to play college tennis, or I want to give it a try, you know, and whether the coach thinks it's possible or not, if they're saying that they want to try and they're willing to do everything, you should give them that attention if you want them at your academy. But they'll say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you can do it. Okay, great. Come here. But I'm over there at 5:30 today. Sorry.
Well,
you're with so-and-so.
JY, let me cut in and yeah, that's the general academy model, because if you want to talk
30 seconds, Pat.
If you want to talk from a business aspect, yeah, you make money off the majority of kids, and then you put the resources in a couple kids. However, while I was at Saddlebrook and everything I've seen, we were one of the most individualistic academies. You know, we had Alvaro, one of our top coaches, that would always be like, hey, let me take the bottom court for an hour and a half today. Let me take these kids, and we would rotate everyone through. Saddlebrook is one of the only academies, not to promote Saddlebrook because I mean I'm not there anymore, but almost 100% of the kids ended up getting to college level tennis.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
awesome. So I'm gonna take my 2 minutes now here, where I want to build. I want to build off of anytime I talk and I look at Gary's just cheesing. Like I look over, Gary's just cheesing whenever I'm talking.
I just love the energy. I
get so excited on this stuff.
I know, me too.
So I'm
working so hard to bite my tongue.
So you guys said some really good things that I want to build on, and I want to go specifically from having the kid implement the technical movement things into a tournament setting and becoming comfortable there. So Gary, you got to stop, bro. So between that, like I'd say like that, you know, even like 11, 12 to 13, you know, depending on their level, like you said, you know, Patrick, that it's like, it is specific to, you know, it does change, right? It is individual. And I always tell kids, and then to compliment JY as well, is I tell parents the same thing. Like you have to guide them. Like they need to be guided, and a parent needs to be told, your kid lost, cool, that's fine. Like they're 11, like it's okay. Oh, you don't have as many trophies as Billy does, cool, great for Billy. He's winning because he might not be going through those stages where he's trusting a process, and then Billy's not going to be able to perform at 16s because he can't keep up with the faster speed because he's technically flawed. And your child is committing to this. Or like Pat, like you said, you know, hey, go out and serve and volley. Hey, you might lose, but you're going to be developing a skill that's going to benefit you, you know, years down the road. And so I tell all my kids all the time, I'm like, hey, what we're doing now, I could care less what you do in 2 weeks. I care about what you do in 2 years. Like, I don't care about what you do in these next 2 hours. It's, are you going to be the same player, at 14, 15? Or like if I'm working with an 11-year-old girl, is she still going to be passionate and look at me as this mentor and this great coach? Or is she going to look at me as like the devil and, hey, I'm a 16-year-old girl and I have a boyfriend and I want to go to the movies and eat popcorn and Bunch of Crunch? Or is she going to skip Friday night Bunch of Crunch because she's got a tournament that she has to prepare for? So just to kind of go off of what you guys say too, is like, I'll focus on that area, because I know we all have, good stuff to say. Is just that's my biggest thing is guiding those players and guiding those parents and allowing them to trust that process in those early stages. And then by the time, my goal is by the time my players are 15, 16, they are competing. They're just playing tennis. They understand what to do. They have a process. And that 11, 12, 13, 14, we learn, we develop, we grow, we have experiences. You lose, you win ugly, win all that stuff. So that's my passionate response, Gary. Hope it hyped you up.
Oh, I'm super hyped, always. I'm just gonna piggyback everybody's. I think the most interesting thing is because that window, and Pat, you're absolutely right. It has to be individual, because I have like a 13-year-old girl who looks like she's 9 because she hasn't actually started going through puberty completely yet, and I have another 13-year-old boy who's got full scruff as much as I do, and he makes fun of me because I can't grow a beard. And so it's very different, right? It is very, very different. And trying to make players fit a mold or a system hurts players, their development. It pushes kids out of the sport. It doesn't work. You can't just band-aid and then this is what we're doing. It definitely, there has to be individual attention. I think one of the biggest things is definitely absolutely what Chris, you just said, in terms of it being a journey, it being a process. And then understanding, like for me, that age is huge for getting kids to start meditating, because it starts to get kids to have an awareness of self, an awareness of their thoughts. They starting, get emotional highs and lows, they start acting out maybe here and there in school, on the court, whatever. It's like, all right, well, if you can understand where you're at right now because you meditate and you practice awareness on a daily basis, you're going to have better control over yourself. You're going to have better control over your highs and your lows. You're going to, understand that this person wants what's best for you because you're not just reacting to what they're saying. And so for me, it's like that's a really great age to start focusing on the mental side. Yes, all the competitive things, understanding what you need to do for a tournament, how you set up, how you do the nutrition, how you balance all the things. But then a big part has to be, okay, how do you deal with the loss? Do you collapse as you're losing, or do you like, okay, no, I'm fine. Coach told me to do this thing. I'm going to keep trying it. And I understand that I'm losing. That's really, really difficult, but I'm going to trust it. I'm going to keep doing it. And so the mental side is where I think that age gets the most benefit. And absolutely agree with what you guys said is if they have a guide, if they have somebody who they can trust and they can believe in, and they, really understand that gives a crap about them, that actually cares for their well-being and isn't just looking at them as like a, some bread that is going to pay for their dinner. I think that really goes a long way, like the genuine care.
Yeah. So Gary, I know that you have a limited time because you have some stuff that you got to take care of. So I want to continue on, and then if JY and Pat and I have anything to add, we can add. But if you can go into, because I think a lot of the people that are going to be watching this video, in my opinion, are probably teenagers, younger people, maybe parents or some coaches. But a lot of kids, I think, really want to know, how do I play college tennis? What level do I need to be at? How do I play at this level? Am I only good enough to play? Their mentality is like, oh, can I only play D3 or D2? Or they focus heavily on, oh, I only want to be doing D1 when there might actually be some solid D2 programs or whatever. So what would be advice that you would give for, that teenager that we're talking about right now that they've developed, they're learning how to compete, et cetera. What piece of advice would you give for those young male, female athletes that aspire to be college athletes? What would you say for those people who are watching that want to get a little bit of guidance from the Gary Kush?
So
Grovich?
great question, and learning from my own mistakes, because I did a terrible job with my own recruiting process. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what schools were available to me. I was really kind of on my own. My sister went to university, my older sister, but she was like chasing her PhD when I was applying, so she wasn't there to help, and I didn't really have a counselor. But having somebody who could actually help you understand what your options are given what you are doing right now. So currently UTR has an incredible system in place, and it's continuing to grow. They're really pushing the collegiate side and the pathway for that. So based on your UTR, you can then take a look at what universities or D1, D2, D3 you could play in the lineup.
College
right? So
fit search.
yeah, college search. It's amazing.
College
it's
fit
amazing.
search on UTR. Yeah, it's so good.
It's one of the best tools. I really wish that I had that available to me when I was younger, because it would have given me a greater window. The other thing is understand that coaches leave and players leave. So if you're going and you're looking at a school, don't base it off of just the coach and the players. Make sure that it's a school you actually want to be at, because yes, the team is a big part of your life, but you have a life outside of it. And so, you have academics. Make sure the academics are what you want to be studying. You have options for what you want to pursue. And just like in terms of what you're doing, just the NCAA rules have changed a lot over the last few years. So it used to be you couldn't reach out nearly until you were in your junior year, right? And the coaches were only allowed to like a few conversations with you. I think they pushed it back to you can start doing like early conversations in 10th grade, right? Whatever that age is, depending on where you're at, like 15-ish, which is much earlier than it used to be. So make sure you're reaching out to colleges. Say, hey, I'm really interested in your program. I want to be a part of your program, and whatever that means. It could be like, hey, I'm bottom of the lineup, but I'm gonna do my dubs. I'm going to be your dubs guy, and I'm going to be there for you. Or, maybe I could play top of the line. And then I guess the last piece is understand if you want to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in the big pond, right? And it's, I think like that's one of the things that a lot of players, especially high performance players, don't think about is if you haven't played international events, understand that the majority of collegiate players are not from the States, right? They are not recruiting as many Americans as they were years ago. It's mostly foreign players. So you might think you're really good. You're going to get your butt handed to you by a lot of these foreign guys who have experienced it. So be humble and think of how you can give your best and, provide and be like a really good teammate to whatever program you go to. And coaches really appreciate that way more than if you're a good player or like a flashy player. They care. Yes, they care if you get the W, but if you're a valued member of the team, they're going to give you the time of day. So consider all those things, pathways, reaching out, communication really early. Start doing a lot of research. Don't leave it to the last minute, because that's kind of what I did. And I didn't fully understand that. Helping my kids, that's what I really try to push them. Like start looking at places your sophomore year, really start considering campuses.
Because I know you're probably gonna have to head out in like 2 minutes. Do Pat or JY, do either of you have a question or a comment for Gary for his last minute?
I would ask, at what age do you think is appropriate for someone to use that college search tool? Because it brings in them looking at their UTR. You knew I was going
Yes.
I was watching JY as Gary was talking, and JY was just, I was like,
UTR
I was like,
UTR, you got my attention.
I was like, JY has something to say about UTR.
Well, it's I guess that's a really good point, because I've had kids and I've worked really, really hard to get them to not, like I've had kids I've worked with that are like every day they're like, I've moved up 0.01 points. And it's like, nobody cares, man. No, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I'm so happy for you, but like, it doesn't matter. And then they get devastated when they lose like a fraction of a point. So it's like, if you're performing well and you're already in the tens, I don't think it hurts, because at that point, if you're developed and you're in the tens UTR or plus, you're probably not making giant leaps within the next, little bit. So like, okay, you understand that it's a process, and for you to make a jump of a point, it's going to take time. And so your head's probably in a better place than the kids that are in the lower range, because that's where it's easy to make that jump, right? Like you can go from a 4 to a 7 in a matter of like a couple of months, right? Whereas like that 10 to 11, it's going to take you closer to a year to really make that transition. 11 to 12, same thing. It's going to take time, because you have to have big wins over bigger players. So I guess if you know your UTR, you can start looking at it if you're in the 10s plus, but it's also age dependent. And I would say like if you're a second half of your junior year, that's a really good time to use it. Or early in your junior year, I would even consider doing that, because it gives you time to be like, okay, I want to play for this, D2, D1 program. It looks really good. I've looked at it, and people on the lineup are in this range. Okay, I've got a year before I can make my commitment to that program to get there. Let me talk to my coach. Let me actually see if I can achieve that. So I feel like junior year would be a good time to start doing that, especially if you're a good player, because you can really, you can make a push for a better program, or maybe a better spot on the program that you want.
So Gary, it's 8:59. You got to get going.
Yeah, I got a minute or so. So I'd love to hear a response from JY.
Any closing remarks before we continue on with JY and Pat?
Well, he just to respond to Gary, yeah, I would say that's a pretty good thought. As like when you reach a certain UTR, which is, Gary wants to use 10 or any other number, then you don't really, like, you're comfortable where you are. Like you're confident in yourself at that point, right? Yeah. It's the players in the lower UTRs that are more unconfident, and that's where like they stare at it, because to them going from 7.5 to 8 UTRs, like they won the national championships, right? Even though they won one round and one match. Yeah. So, but yeah, once you're a 10 and you understand, like, look, for me to go to 10.1, like, I don't care. Like, I've got bigger things to worry about. So that's a good way to think about it. And I think maybe for like, it could be a great tool for the coach working with the player to talk with his parents, not so much with the player, right? Because then the coach can see like, okay, maybe up to like maybe 13, 14, right? Okay, your child told me they had this goal like a year ago. Are we trending in the right direction? Are we not? Let's have that. Okay, can we do? And then they can talk about how to restructure their environment if they need, or if they're doing the right things, Right. So I think it's a tool a lot of coaches could use to lead discussions with parents, as opposed to the players and parents staring at it,
Yeah.
Cool.
Agreed. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Gary.
Gary, tell the people what to do.
Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you like and subscribe. All right. Have a good one, gentlemen.
All right. See you, Gary. Thank you. And he is out. All right. So Pat, let's have you. I wanted to let Gary speak a little bit longer, because I knew that he had to head out. So Pat, for you, what would you say, advice going into college, whether it's like something that you had learned from your recruiting process? Yeah. Because I'm eager to hear, both yours and JY's answer, because I didn't go through, I went through a very small recruiting process, a very tiny one. But I'm excited to hear what you, for your advice for these juniors looking to play college tennis.
Yeah, so one of the things at Saddlebrook I did was the help with the college placement and that path. Yeah, like with what Gary was saying, I don't think your UTR really matters until you're like junior year. That idea of getting to a 10 UTR and then thinking about it, that's a pretty good idea. I've never really thought about it that way, because also if you look at the college breakdown, there's many different colleges with availability under a 10 UTR. And also if you're deciding between Division 1, 2, and 3, there's a lot of overlap. Basically, like my answer with everything else, it depends on the person very, very specifically, their personality, what they want in life, what direction they want to go. If you're looking to transition to pro tennis, you can go to a smaller school, be a big fish in a small pond, and get all the backing. Some smaller schools have good funding. I know players, I'm not going to put them on blast, but they went to smaller schools and then they ended up getting like their first like 2 years on tour paid for because they were a breakthrough player at that school, you know. But then you also got the big schools that have access to wild cards and money in that route, and that's also a good option. But it's harder to work your way up those teams. But yeah, I mean, my advice for anyone going through college is don't worry about your UTR. You want to work on your process. Your junior year, you can play some more. There are some tournaments you can play that can boost your UTR a little bit, which will help you kind of apply for colleges, but it's very individual based. Like these UTR men's opens are pretty good to get a kid that's like 9 UTR, a couple boosted a little bit, you know, which does help with the recruiting process, even though, I mean, you know, back in our day, it was point chasing for, you know, national tournaments, getting the ranking up, getting the, what is it, tennis recruiting with the star system, blue chip players and everything. And now it's UTR. So there is a bit of the, you know, chasing that at throughout history. But yeah, I would say keep your options open, think about what you want in life, focus on the process, and then your junior year, start to analyze realistically where you are.
JY, what do you got for us? Do you want to respond?
You know, yeah.
Disagree with me, JY. Fight me.
No, I'm actually writing down notes about questions I need to ask you off air, because there's some interesting things that I don't want to like this UTR breakdown, the college, like that stuff's really interesting. So I can't disagree with you yet. The only thing I wanted to, like, if I can even add this, because look, I got lucky that I got really good really young, so I didn't have to worry about the college recruiting process. You know, they came to me, you know, so that I didn't. But the one thing that I can add is I never thought about like college or anything. Like, and it even really, I didn't start thinking about like maybe I want to go pro to the age of like 14, right? When I decided I got in high school, like, okay, like what, you know, my dad played pro, I want to play pro, but I just wanted to get as good as I freaking possibly could every day.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to win every match, every tournament. Like I love playing, I love competing, and I didn't care who I was playing against. Like I wanted to beat everybody, right? And so I never looked at my Florida ranking, my national ranking. Like it wasn't until I got to Florida State that they told me about like what my rankings were in juniors. Like I just never looked at them, because I just, okay, I lost quarters of clay courts. Okay, I want to win it. Let's go win it. Like that's all that mattered to me, right? Like win everything, you know. But and that fueled me to just get better. And then I got to the point where, oh, I guess I'm good enough to have options. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something that a lot of players need to do a better job of. Like just get as good as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Like just keep going. Like stop thinking like, okay, I'm good enough. Like, because you don't know how good you can be. And when you thought maybe you're only going to be a Division II player, now maybe you're a full ride D1 player because you really pushed it those last 3 years.
Yeah.
Pat, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah.
He didn't really disagree with you, so you didn't really get to have any, you know.
I know. I want to fight to break out on this at some point, but
well, I'm sure we'll have some disagreements. I'm sure
just
we'll
keep talking about UTR. I'm sure I'll argue.
Did you do your own tournament schedule when you were a junior?
No, and this is, look, I was very, very lucky. Both my parents played pro.
Yeah.
They kind of knew like how to develop me or just give me the right environment. So again,
Yeah.
I was so lucky with that.
So that's where, from a junior perspective, you need to kind of know your ranking and everything to see what tournaments you get into and what you're going to play and everything. And that's all individual based as well. I mean, when I was a kid, my dad said you can't play nationals until you win everything in the section. When I could beat everybody in the section, then I could go play nationals. So once I got to one in the section, I could go play nationals. So I didn't start playing national tournaments until I was like in the 16s, which,
Which probably benefited you though massively because you learned how to compete.
yeah, well, I
Properly.
mean, it depends. It depends. There are positives and negatives to everything. But similarly to JY, I didn't care what my ranking was. I thought one in the section was trash because I knew there were national players. And then when I got highly ranked in the nation, I was like, that's trash because I'm not, ITF or pro ranked. And then it's like I get my ATP point, and then I'm just like, okay, this is just futures, and it's never enough. And if you have
Yeah.
the mentality that it's never enough, and you keep pushing and keep developing, and you love the process, that produces the best players. I mean, they
Yeah.
always do interviews where Federer's still trying to get better, Nadal's trying to still get better, Djokovic's still trying to get better. If any of them got satisfied at any point in their career, they'd get passed so quick. So
And
sorry,
that's why that's why for a lot of people, they can't believe it. And they're like, oh my God, like that's crazy. Like, I don't want my son to like live that way, or my daughter to live that way. But there's a level of insanity with anyone who makes it great at anything.
Yeah.
There's that idea to always want more, to never be satisfied, comes with a lot of moments where they actually did have a good tournament, but again, they're not satisfied. So it can be very stressful for the player, but that stress is what leads them to work harder, want to work harder. So as long as it's being done in a healthy way, you have to have that desire for always wanting more. And you flirt with the line of burnout, and that's why burnout happens at every level. But with someone guiding you along the way, we go back to that. Those burnouts will be very short because they'll catch you because they know you and they care about you.
So we got to wrap up the college talk so we can get on to.
Can I interject with one thing real quick on the stress levels?
You have 15 seconds, and then I got to add in my.
I took
45 seconds of input.
So in college, I had a human development class, and it's a pretty popular graph where it's what stress level is the healthiest. If your stress level is too low or too high, it damages your body basically. So you need to find your individual stress tolerance and where you need to be exactly. And if you need to be kind of like balls to the wall, nothing's enough, pressure, and that's where you thrive, then that's where you thrive. And that's how you need to live your life. But then if you're one of those people that, you need to be kind of on the lower end, then it's, go enjoy your tournament and look at it that way instead. So there is a range that is, again, it's personal, and it depends on the player again.
Yeah. So the one thing
that's good.
The one I think you between all three of you, I think you guys covered it. I mean, there's really not much for me to add. I think you guys did a great job of covering everything. The one thing that I know that I would tell, my players kind of as they go into that process is like, you've really got to be honest with yourself with what do you want out of college tennis. It's so important. Like, do you have a desire to, potentially play pro, right? Does the person's level mean that if they go to college, can they play pro? Is it even realistically there? Can they develop into that? But really ultimately, what do you want out of college tennis? Is it something that you want to be a part of a team? If that's the case, maybe, academics are your folks, but then you're still on the club team because club teams are still pretty good. I mean, there's still some really good high level club players because maybe they don't want the commitment to, college. And so I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give to, juniors watching is first off, be honest with yourself, right? Why are you pursuing college tennis? Is it because it's something that you want? Is it something that because your parents want? I think a person's want versus somebody else's want is really important to clarify that. And then really ultimately, hey, if you want, I think there's a lot of players who are 15, 16 that want to play Division I tennis. I think just because it sounds cool, right? Or it's an ego boost, and it's not really because they genuinely want to do that. And then, hey, if this is what you want, then look at yourself in the mirror and are you really doing the right things? If you're chasing a Division I school, in my opinion, you're probably not doing the right things to do that, right? Like JY, like you said, you were good at a young age. Like you knew that that's what you were going to be doing. And so that would be my opinion, is for the players to really be honest with yourself and then obviously create a plan based off of that, while all the while trusting, that process of going into it. Because I think there are a lot of tools out there. I know that there are a lot of college recruiting businesses out there. And then, the UTR tools, I haven't personally seen it or explored it to have an opinion on that. I don't know if USTA has a tool. I know that there's college showcases. But I think that's why these videos are so valid, right? Because then it's like we can actually educate people on that and then kind of go from there. So
the UTR tools are very helpful right now. I mean,
I'll have to take
crazy.
a look at it and see.
Because you can do a UTR college fit. You can put your UTR in. You can select which division. You can do all divisions. You can select which spot you're going to play on the team. So, I tell all the kids that I work with, you want some schools where you're going to play top 3 right away in your college emails, and then you want some schools that you're going to start at 6, 7, to really build yourself up. But that tool, that came out about a year ago, and it made my job a lot easier.
I'm super pumped to be teaching at a tennis center that has William and Mary, right? Because I'm at William and Mary Tennis Center, and I've started to build a really good relationship with both female and male team and the coaches. And it's really fun to get that insight on a team like William and Mary, right? Division I school, but lower ranked Division I, what that coach, I mean, him and we talk about a lot of this, and he's like, I would rather have more depth to my team than having 2 studs at 1 and 2 and then nothing else, because also different colleges have X amount of scholarships they can give out, right? So then that's a whole nother topic. And so, that's, why communicating to coaches and people will help you narrow down what you really want. And so seeing their practices, and because I'm walking on court with my players right after they're done practicing. And so, my players get to watch their practice and so forth. So kind of moving forward from, and this is our last topic, and then we'll close things up, moving from the junior tennis to pro, which is a very, 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 very small percentage of players going from college to pro and, make a career of it. JY, lead us off, buddy. What would be your view, opinion, argumentative statement that Pat can fire back on? What is your opinion of college to pro tennis? What's the difference? What it takes? Whatever comes to your mind that you feel like you would be informative for everybody. 2.5 minutes. See what you got.
All right. I think you'd have to first identify why you're going out to try to play. Are you going to just experience the tour, or are you going to just simply, like, you really want to try to make a career? You think you can make money with it financially? Because if you're going to go just have, enjoy the tour, learn about it, you want to be a coach, or you just, you've played tennis your whole life, you want to see what it's like, great, go play, have fun, kind of have a base you can train out of and do your fitness guy and go. If you're going to go play and you really want to make a career out of it, my advice would be don't go cheap. Okay, look, if you've accepted this route, that means you've accepted that you're not going to make money until you make what, 150, 200 in the world, right? And that's without that's with no sponsor, right? So so you got to have a coach with you as much as you can, at least a couple tournaments a year. You already need them at home full time. You need them a couple tournaments a year. Yes, it's expensive, but maybe you can split them with 1 or 2 other players, because you can really get lost on the future circuit. All right. It is the grind fest, and it can be miserable when you feel like you're playing for a professional match and you get a $107 paycheck and you're playing out of a high school park with no real bathroom. You're using a porta potty and you can't shower anywhere, but that's a professional event.
No
And when you
fans.
lose first round, yeah, no fans. And then after you lose a couple of those matches, especially if you decide to play in the US, I mean, you're playing guys that are going to be 100, 200, 300 first rounds qualities of these futures. And if you don't have someone there watching you, making sure, hey, you're fine, you're doing the right thing. Yeah, I know that stinks. I know you just lost in the park and you got to go use a porta potty. Like that's
Because a 12-year-old strung your racket at the local pro shop.
I know, and they strung it 10 pounds loose, and now you got to go play a professional match, right? So shout out to Pro Stringer for portable stringing machines and Johnny Valenti. So yeah, you gotta, because if you have too many of those moments, it's going to be a rough time. You're going to find yourself losing motivation, want to quit. And if you check your bank account once and seeing it in the negative or having credit card debt hurts you, just don't play. Don't play.
That was all well said.
Yeah.
Pat?
I mean,
Pat never went cheap. He used to sleep in his Honda in a Walmart parking lot.
Yeah. Anderson, shout out to Anderson for rescuing me. I was sleeping in a Walmart parking lot. Yeah, that's tough. But yeah, I mean, ideally you want to, I learned the hard way. I mean, there's saving money, smartly, and then there's, grinding it out and just killing yourself for no reason, which is what I did for a while. The biggest, okay, so to simplify, the biggest thing from college to pro, I think, is the off-court stuff. Yeah, you want to know why you're going to play. That should be a goal, because there is a percentage of guys going to play futures for the experience, just to get out there, just to say they did it, But the off-court stuff, as far as managing your training schedule, managing your training while on the road. Me and Sekou joined LA Fitness so we could hit the LA Fitnesses all across the US, just to have some like standardization and equipment we were using. The traveling coach is tough, but then also it's like, there are hard decisions you have to make. It's like I gave my whole life to this sport. I don't have money for a coach on the road. I don't have money for a hotel. Do I quit, or do I sleep in my car and I battle this out for some points, so I can be main draw and then try to keep it going, So, I mean, it's a very personal choice, I think. But yeah, there's saving money, and then there's just grinding and killing yourself. But I look back at the Futures Tour fondly, even though it was hell. And, sometimes I wish I could go back and do it again. But yeah, I agree with you. But then also, if we're talking about college to pro, different colleges have different resources as far as getting to professional tennis.
Yes.
So that's another thing where if you're going to be a big fish in a small pond at a place that has resources and give you donors and stuff like that, or if you can go to a school that has access to wild cards that allows you to skip the qualies grind because you're going to get 6 main draw wild cards in futures and you should pull off a point or two here or there. That's another decision. But nobody talks about the management side of tennis. You have to be your own manager, and that's a huge learning curve on how to do things. And then, do you want to cut costs on cheap stringing, or do you actually want to get your racket strung right, or do you want to cut costs and stay in a cheap hotel in the Dominican Republic where you almost got killed, or do you want to stay in a tournament hotel? We all have those stories, and it's like, look, I stayed in some sketchy places. I got bed bugs in places. It's just tough choices. But
yeah,
and these are no jokes. Like, everyone listening, like, Patrick's being real. Like, those are real things he had to decide on where to go, where to stay. Dominican Republic. I mean, I was with 5 other guys in one room, 2 guys sleeping on the floor, everyone else sharing a bed. Like, and we all go play like 3rd round qualifying.
So I was, just for people who are watching, like, I was that guy who I went and played professionally, but to learn, right? That was I went into it. I want to learn.
I was targeting you when I said that.
Huh?
I was targeting you when I said that.
Which?
When I said there are guys out there that are just going for the experience.
I was for the experience, right? But the thing though, for me is like, we wouldn't all be in the Zoom call right now, right? If I didn't go do that. And so I think that's the part of it for me was like, I knew tennis was going to be my life and my career as a coach. And I knew I needed to do that. And I, I can laugh at these experiences because I went through them and I saw them. I saw everybody at the highs and lows. And so I 100% agree with JY is like, if you are going to go play professionally, plan for it in years in advance and do it right. If you need to start saving money 2 years in advance because you know that you're going to have expenses to do it right, then do that. Like I knew for a year before quitting my job at Quince Orchard in Maryland that I was going to go play professionally. And so I planned for that, right? I got rid of my car. I sold my apartment furniture. I tried to cut back expenses. I made, Pat, you used to call me Team Trizzy all the time. I made Team Trizzy t-shirts.
Team Trizzy.
I made $2,000 off selling t-shirts for people to support me. And it's like, I did all these things and I saved up my money to make sure that I could stay at a hotel and get a good night's sleep so that I could eat the proper meals. If I needed to go get a massage, I had a Massage Envy membership, to really kind of manage that. And so when you brought up Sekou, I love Sekou. He probably shouldn't have spent his money on Tinder Gold. He probably should have spent it on, I always used to joke with him on that. He'd be in like Iowa. I hope Sekou sees it. He'd be in Iowa, like looking, and I'm like, bro, shouldn't you be focusing on your match coming up? He's like, no, man. He goes like, this is in Niceville, Florida next week. Like I'm prepping. I was like, bro, so
it depends how you do it. That could be important.
So funny. He's like, I need fans. So, but no, yeah. I think it's, going from, like you said, like there are a lot of resources in colleges, like as we all know, and I'm sure you guys probably might've had this at Florida State or Virginia Tech, where, the schools, will pay for, to go play futures events. Maybe not for you, Pat.
Nothing.
But, some schools, I know some schools did that. I do know some players at some schools that have had that where, that was tied in, where the school did help out so they could pursue that playing professionally. But, and then last thing, I think we can finish it here is, and this is only 2 minutes each. And then just a quick thing on, pro tennis at the highest. I mean, like JY for you, I mean, obviously you got to spend a lot of time with Riley. What was like the biggest key of success there at that level? Is it keeping him comfortable? Is it keeping him happy? Is it trying to have him have his best day? I mean, what was like the biggest thing that you would say on that? And then, Pat, 2 minutes for you as well with the pro stuff that you've experienced. And then we can finish it here.
For us, just where Riley was and everything, it was just putting the entire structure in place of what his life was going to be like. Who was his support team? Who was his strength and conditioning coach? Who was his physio that he traveled with? How his practices were like, what his days were like, how long were his practices? For example, for him, for the size of his body, you don't want to warm it up and get it cold too many times in one day. So he only did one practice a day, right? We always traveled the day in advance so that the first day we landed, we didn't have to practice at a tournament, right? Because his body from the plane. So just learning how to structure all that, I thought was the best thing, because then it made everything else so much easier, because we knew a little bit what you said about how to put him in the best environment, the happiest environment to succeed.
Yeah. Pat?
Yeah. So
you get 30 seconds.
It depends what level you're talking about and everything. If you're at that top 100 level, yeah, you need that team in place that you can rely on, and the trust is a huge thing. If you're second guessing everything a member on your team is doing, then that's going to cause some issues. Working with Caroline was actually really great because she actually had a small team. Her dad was her coach. I was her hitting partner. She had her agent that came a lot, and we all kind of did it together for a while, and that was very eye-opening. But again, every player is different, and everybody's priority and what they need in their team is different. There are some players on tour, they need that to blow off steam. You know, they need the guy that they can go and party with. But that's going to keep the partying in check. You know, that is actually a big factor in a lot of players transitioning. It's like JY said, it's finding out the balance in what your life is going to be like, and how can you do this day in and day out, not burn out, not get pissed off at everybody, and just keep plugging away.
Did you guys ever have an experience where working with a pro player where they wore too many hats and didn't allow the coach to coach? Or like, has that ever been a situation for you guys with working with a pro player where, you know, does the professional athlete, do they control the practices? Like, how much input does that player have versus how much trust does the coach have? Like that dynamic between, you know what I mean? Like the player obviously knows themselves and they know what level they're at, but then also kind of facing the reality of, hey, if I want to be here, you know, how much trust do I put into myself versus how much trust do I put in to the coach and let the coach coach so I can just, as the player, play?
I mean, generally the results will start to show at some point.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one way. And then it just becomes about managing that conversation of, well, look, I think just being straightforward with them. And it's like, look, you brought me on here as a coach and you're not letting me coach. Now, this is the way I want to do things. Are you going to allow me to do it this way or not? Because this is the way I coach. So if you don't let me do it that way, then maybe you can just find somebody who prefers to do it your way. And that's, you just start that conversation if it's going out like that. But usually results start to show, and then they kind of let you talk a little more. You know, they look for a little more help.
Yeah, because then it's like if there's stuff that you want to do, but then you're not getting the results that you want, but it's like, well, I didn't get to do what I wanted to do because you didn't let me coach. So of course we're not going to get results because I haven't been able to do kind of what I wanted. Pat, I mean, any experiences that you might have had where kind of that similar situation?
So yeah, I do want to say it does depend on the player though, as far as how much control they have on everything and how much of a say they have. Like working with Gabby, a lot of it is a collaboration because she's been out there so long. She's an established top 10 in the world player. So when I would work with her, it's this is what I see. What do you think? No, I see this. Okay. And we would have long conversations. And then that's how we got on the same page, where I've seen other players on tour that need it straight away. This is what you need to do. And they want to just put their head down and do what the coach says. So there's a wide span there. And then there's also, I mean, we've seen it. There's the coaches on tour that are just yes men that just want to keep their jobs, you know, that won't stand up to what players say, you know, and then there's the coaches that are, you know, there are good coaches out there that, you know, some things don't go the right way and then they get fired immediately. So, I mean, the coaching world is crazy on the tour level. I mean, the WTA side, they cycle through coaches pretty quick. I mean, I guess same with the men's side, but
definitely not as bad as the women's.
Yeah, the women's side, there's a bit of a, you know, and then also, I mean, a lot of the times the tour coach for women is just a vibes guy. If he's got good vibes, they generally have good results if they're already playing at a high level, you know.
Agreed.
If they're already playing and they already know their game, if you can just say complete bullshit but in a positive, fun way, and they're just like, yeah, you know, I love that pattern, and somehow that pattern works, you know, like too good, you know, it's sometimes just the confidence you bring to the table is a factor more than the technical, tactical coaching side. So, but I mean, in modern tennis, the stats are becoming more and more of a factor. So analyzing the stats is huge. And then, you know, again, it depends on the player. It depends on the player.
Yeah.
Literally everything.
All righty. Well, I think this about wraps up. We had, I mean, that was a very, I think in my opinion, detailed long conversation, a lot of information that we covered, from juniors all the way up until pro. Any closing comments that you guys have? Any kind of piece of advice for people who watch this whole thing and hopefully it applied to somebody? Any last comments that you guys have that you want to close up with? That takes 10 seconds.
I'd say just stick with the process, figure out what you want to do with your life and just go for it, and then come up with a plan on how to do it. But yeah, working with someone that's been there, or a knowledgeable person, find someone you can trust and rely on, and then use them to their potential.
I think if they do it remotely, I think they can go to there's this website, right? It's like,
yeah, JY, what's that website?
It's abonetennis.com. I heard it's a great place.
That's you. That's crazy.
That would be me.
If you're not in Florida or Virginia and not near us, and you've got, you have JY here. JY,
I will say, yeah, look, I'll say, I've been running it now for almost 2 months. It's actually, I'm really excited about what I'm doing with that stuff and how much I think it can help. Like,
yeah.
It's making me a better coach. It seriously, and I didn't expect it. I didn't expect to look at things the way I did after seeing that. So it's been really fun. And I would just say, everyone, just get as good as you can every day and let the results take care of themselves, and you'll probably end up in a good place.
Yeah. All right, guys, if you have any questions, guys, feel free to comment below after you like and subscribe. But comment below any questions. We will be 100% sure to answer that. And then also comment any topics that you all want to hear us discuss. With that being said, JY, Pat, thank you. Gary already left us, so thank you, Gary. I'm sure Gary's upset that he missed out on the remainder of this conversation. I'm sure he had some fun things to add from his pro experience. But as always, guys, thank you everybody. And closing comments. What do they got to do, Patty?
Stick with the process.
Oh, you're supposed to say subscribe. And
like and subscribe.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you all so much.
All right.
Have a good night. Bye.